welcome to our 16th episode of our Ellie Talks podcast. A very important one, as today's topics concerns all of us as more than ever before. The reality today is that times are very, very difficult, and many companies in our industry are currently struggling with the extreme rises in cost, energy costs, labor costs, and many of them are forced to pause production. However, today, we do not want to focus on the difficulties, but also a little bit on the opportunities to bring a positive story. The opportunities that sustainability can offer in the future of our beautiful industry. With the end of the year approaching, we'll focus on a positive yet realistic message, which is important for all the listeners. And we're very happy that our guest today has found the time to come to Kortrijk and to join us today in the studio. We'd like to welcome Mr. Quix, General Manager of Fedustria, to the studio. Welcome, Fa. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Fine. Is this your first time in a podcast studio?
I think so, yes.
It's not the first time that I was able to interview you, because I remember a few years ago I have written my master thesis on the textile industry, and then we have already worked together a lot since then. But first time, I think, in the light of our Ellie Talks, I am very happy to welcome you today. Many of us know you, but for those who don't know you yet, can you maybe introduce yourself to the listeners? What drives you? Who are you? And where does your passion for the textile industry come from?
Well, I'm already working more than 40 years for the Association Textiles, Woodworking Furniture. But I started in the textiles industry in 1981. And I was fascinated by industry in general, how it works, how companies can make added value out of raw materials and make nice products and earn money with it. So the whole manufacturing industry has fascinated me from the beginning, already as a student. Mm-hmm. And so it was before, the first time was it more in the machinery, but now it's in textiles.
Okay, great. So, and today, as general manager from Fedustria, you represent 1,700 of those production companies in the textile industry in Belgium. Also, the wood industry is under the wings of Fedustria. Can you maybe explain us a little bit what Fedustria exactly does?
Well, we only have one goal, and that is the prosperity of the manufacturing companies that are part of our association, textile companies, but also woodworking and furniture companies. So we want to make them prosper and try to help them where we can. And we have three tools. We have force lobbying. We try to influence politics to have a good environment for the companies. Information, so that our companies are well information, is a second tool, and the third tool is servicing our companies to help them, for instance, in doing more exports or in to be more environmentally friendly.
Okay, which will be the topic of today. And can you maybe share how an average day looks like at Fedustria for you?
Well, I start with some plans, but mostly they don't come out because the things happening during the day take over my agenda. So that's a reality. So I have to be very flexible and note that every moment my agenda can change in order to respond to the actual topics that come to me.
So you have to be very resilient and every day, and I can imagine in the current conditions it's being very flexible as well. Let's talk about the local industry. So you have been a manager for about 16 years. How have you seen the evolution of the textile industry in Belgium?
Well, there are some important aspects. I think a first one is that we left more and more commodities and went more and more into specialization. and also more customized products. So it is really an industry that is more towards specialization. And the best example is perhaps the importance of technical textiles. About 30 years ago, it was a minor industry in the textiles industry. It was only 10 and 12% of the textiles industry in Belgium. Today, it's the most important part of the Belgian textile industry. About half of our textile industry is technical textiles, such as protective workwear, geotextiles, medical textiles like face masks and so on. These products are technical, but based on textiles. And they require a lot of know-how and research and innovation, and that's why we can prosper in this type of products, because we can manage to make knowledge-intensive products based on textiles, and that's why now this is the most important part of the Belgian textiles. But there is a second one, very, very important also, but less than half of our industry, and that's all interior textiles, the decoration of textiles, carpets, rugs, furniture fabrics, household textiles, mattress sticking. These are also a specialty for the Belgian textile industry. That's the second most important part of the Belgian textiles industry. And there I also saw upgrading coming from very low-end commodities to more specialized products in carpets and rugs, more individualized, and also more and more environmentally friendly. So it also had a certain development, less volume, but more quality and more sustainability.
Okay, great to hear. And if you compare, because of course Fedustria is at the Belgian level, Fedustria also plays a very important role in a European level. How do you see the differentiation between the Belgian textile industry and the European industry? Well, is it similar?
Yes, it's about similar. I think when I meet my European colleagues, we have the same challenges and we face the same difficulties in general. But there is perhaps one different point, and that is that Belgium is not so specialized anymore in the fashion as such for clothing. It's a minor part of our industry, whereas in France and Italy, for instance, it's still important, the fashion wear for people, but it's not so important, although we have some good companies, but it's not that important one. So technical textiles and interior textiles, that are the main products that we make in Belgium, and that's a little difference compared to some of our neighboring countries.
Looking at a broader level, speaking about the European industry, how do you see the future of the European industry? I know it's a difficult question because it has some challenges right now. But
oh, well, it's of course a difficult question because today we face an energy crisis, and the impact of the energy crisis is huge on our industry. All industries are concerned, but certainly the textiles industry in Belgium and in Europe. But in normal circumstances, we have a good future because we have the right products, strong companies, lean and mean, very automized. Most of them have also the digital aspects that they need to be competitive. So I think we are strong as such, so we should not fear the future. But of course, there are things happening outside of the companies. We had the COVID crisis, and now we have the energy crisis. These are things that happen outside of the companies, but they have a huge impact. And I see that today, because of this specific European energy crisis, because it is not happening in other parts of the world, we lose a lot of competitiveness. And so it is for most companies in the manufacturing industry a matter of survival in the first days. We have to survive the next 6 to 12 months to be able to continue our normal activities. So it is not a normal period, and the activities are not as they should be, but when we survive, we can certainly count on a bright future.
Yeah, a resilient industry, but I think we had some troubles in the past already. So let's hope and support the companies to get through the difficult period.
Yes, it's now also a matter of finance. Can companies be financed enough to survive this severe period? But they are, as such, well equipped, and they have the right products, the right strategy to be successful in the future. So it is a matter of survival now, and then it will be okay.
Let's zoom in into that strategy part and the opportunity actually that the topic of Ellie focuses on today is the topic of sustainability. When we look on our platform Ellie.Connect, we already see a lot of nice projects from textile companies, companies taking their first steps, but also circular born new companies that arise in the textile industry. Did you feel yourself a certain moment in time when things started to change when it comes to sustainability?
Well, in fact, it is a long-term development. Already about 30 years ago, it started with the awareness for the environment. That was the first step, because there was almost no legislation and there was no awareness that we had an impact on the environment. And then that started very quickly in the 80s of previous century, and companies had to adapt themselves. And going now into the direction of sustainability is the next step. So they already took in the past a lot of steps to be companies that are environmentally friendly. The legislation is very severe, so they have to comply with it. But next step is, can we go further? And next step is, can we have a wholly sustainable company? And that's where we are now. And so there is not an exact moment, but it is the next step in a development that started about 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And can you maybe share some learnings from, I think, the past year or the past 2 years that you learned from companies about implementing sustainability or circularity more in particular? What have been like the wins or challenges on this topic?
Well, it is difficult. That's the first message. It is easy to pronounce we have to be sustainable and we have to organize a circular economy in our company, but to achieve this in reality is very, very difficult, because it needs sometimes almost a new business strategy. It's starting by the conception of the products, the eco-design. How do we design our products so that they can be in a circular economy cycle? So that requires a different approach. How can we have a better supply of raw materials that fit in this strategy, and how can we organize post-consumer the treatment of the waste, and to make out of this waste a new raw material at a good price. So a lot of questions come above once you start in this circular economy mentality or strategy, and that's not easy. And I see that there are mostly larger companies that are dedicated to do that. Some small and medium-sized companies also, but the most are the bigger ones, because it requires a lot of efforts on the side of human resources and also finance to achieve this. And some really go for it, and they have already good results. But as I see, it's still limited to a few big companies that see that it is the future. But we have 95% of small and medium-sized companies, and for them it is a a challenge they sometimes don't oversee. They don't see how to start, what they can do, and they also think, can we make a difference in that field? And that is paralyzing sometimes these small and medium-sized companies, and we should try to convince them that also at their level they should do some efforts, and it can start by small steps, but they should also integrate in their strategy sustainability, and it is not easy to convince them, and not that they are unwilling, but they are not convinced that either they can do it because they are small, or that they are not sufficient in human resources or finance to do that. So it's a very big challenge for most companies, but even for the bigger ones, it should not be underestimated how difficult it is to organize it all, because a lot of steps in the circular economy are outside of the company. Most you have to rely on some third parties to assemble the waste, to make raw material out of it, to recycle it. So this is not easy. And then finally, the recycled product should be able to be reintegrated in the production process, but also at a good price. So it has to be a competitive price. The recycled raw material has to be competitive in price compared to the virgin raw material, to be able to sell it, because customers are not always interested in too expensive products. They cannot afford it also. So that's also a challenge. How can we have an affordable supply chain in the circular economy? It's not easy, and I see that a lot of companies struggle to do that. And last point, there is also a shortage of material that can be recycled. How can we get that material? Is it good enough to be recycled, and is it in volume enough? Because we need enough volume to have that in our circuit. So these are all very big challenges, and I see that we have to take time. We have to convince. It cannot go as quickly as some politicians would like to, or we would like to. But we have to face reality. It is an intense, costly, and difficult process. So it needs time, and certainly for the small and medium-sized companies, they even need more time.
I think I would say for the second point that Ellie and Ellie.Connect, the platform, can already help in finding the right partners. If people are looking for recycling partner, or just some inspiration cases of comparable companies to see how they approached it, then definitely joining the ecosystem might already be a good first idea. But I do agree that it is a difficult challenge, and especially in this current times when we have this economic crisis, recession on our plates as well. It's difficult to make the choice and to free capacity, time, and budget to do this. But when we prepared for this interview, you quoted very nicely, we need to be economic sustainable to be ecologically sustainable. A very important message.
Well, sometimes I have the impression that we lose balance between economy and ecology. Both are important, but you cannot have a sustainable business in the ecological way when the business is not economically sustainable. So we have to be viable, profitable. If a company is not profitable, makes not enough money, then it will never be a sustainable company in the ecological way, because it cannot afford it to do that. So we must rebalance this equilibrium, that first companies need to live, to be successful, and to earn money. And then at the same time, but certainly not before, then they can have the idea of getting more sustainable. So then that comes in the picture. But I see that some of our companies are not investing anymore in more sustainability because they have no money anymore. So we have to be aware that we will never have an ecological paradise on an economic ruin. So it must be in equilibrium, and that's why we say go not too fast, because then you will bring companies in difficulty. They are willing but not be able, and then they will not follow the big picture.
Okay, but okay, the economic crisis, well, it's since COVID, it's not really new, but it's newer. What we do feel is that there are still companies who haven't taken their first steps, even not in the past 4 years. Of course, the current times are making the barrier to start even bigger. What would be your advice to them? Why should they really see it more as an opportunity instead of really a barrier of being sustainable?
Well, yes, it is. That's what they see. It's a barrier. It is costs. We should try to make them see that it is an opportunity, because it will be more and more demanded by the customers, the market, and I think also the retail, big retail companies. They are imposing now these requirements on sustainability. So in the future they will be confronted with the demands of the customers to be more and more sustainable. So at the moment perhaps it is not an issue for some, but it will certainly become an issue in the next years, and it will be driven, I think, by the customer, the final customer, the people that buy the products, and also the retail, the big retail. They will impose it, and that I think that you should never forget, and they should never forget, and also public procurement by the governments. They insert more and more criteria on sustainability. So if you want to apply for a governmental project or a public procurement, then you will need to be more sustainable, because otherwise you will never be selected anymore. So on that side also, the governmental side, there is more and more the obligation to be more sustainable, and to integrate recycled fibers, to do something on the field of circular economy, and then they will be able to have some new orders, but otherwise it will be difficult.
So you talk about the government from the side of public procurement.
Yeah, yes.
What about the legislation? Because as far as we heard, there's a lot changing. We have some reports on that as well that we launched the previous months. Do you expect these legislations coming from Europe to create a major shift in the industry? Will this drive the change, the sustainability change in the companies? What is your feeling about that?
I want to be careful, but I think what I see now is that there is overkill of legislative initiatives. So if it is too much on too much aspects, it will not be able for most companies to cope with. They will say, what is coming now? It's like a legislative tsunami coming on our companies.
We're almost at the end of our podcast, Fa. I think a very unique, interesting one, as it's almost Christmas. What would be your hopeful final message to the listeners? A positive note, one to end this year, 2022, and maybe start 2023 with a renewed positivity.
Yes. Be self-confident. Of course, the circumstances are not good, but you should keep on focusing on what are your strengths, and you believe in it. So self-confidence in what you can is the best way to get out of the crisis.
Okay. Thank you very much. With this message, this nice message, we're at the end of the episode, which is the last one of 2022. Thank you very much, Fa, for being here and for addressing such an inspiring, challenging, I think critical, but also optimistic and positive note today with us. To all our listeners out there, has this episode inspired you to continue investing in sustainability? I really hope so. Then you can find new collaborations on our platform, Ellie.Connect, www.Ellie.Connect.com. So definitely worth having a look at and registering. Because the Ellie network can be your starting point into more sustainability. And especially for this episode, as an end of the year gift, we have created a challenge-based learning guide, a special guide that will help you to learn from experiences and also gain knowledge from inside and outside your organization. It's a new learning method that will enable you to take easy, low budget, low time steps to shape your circular and sustainable strategy. And you can find it on the blog post of this podcast episodes. So please let us know if you're looking for any support, in-person support. Ellie is always there to help you. Just reach out. And we definitely hope that you will be joining the podcast or the next podcast episodes, because in 2023 more interesting episodes will be coming as well, with more challenges and more opportunities definitely to come. We hope we can start the year with a hopeful message again, and to push you to collaborate more, to inspire, inform and connect the textile industry. Thank you very much. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and see you next year. Bye.